Hi, today I would like to talk to you about the Regency period and Regency romance and why it is so appealing to readers, and then follow it up with a question of what's next, because all genres will wax and wane. They'll become very popular and then they'll start to fade out. Even if some of them are enduring, I don't think Regency will ever completely go away. I'm not sure that we'll see kind of the same passion that we see now, especially made popular through Bridgerton. Before I talk about the Regency period, I need to tell you that it was set within the Georgian period. The Georgian period went from 1714 to 1830. It saw a lot of change, especially with fashion, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. The Regency period happened because King George III had bouts of mental illness. He had some big ones and then he was able to recover, but in 1811 he had not recovered, and they declared the Regency Act, which made George IV, his son, the acting ruler. He wasn't the king because the king had not died, but he was the regent. He was the one that ruled the land. And this went on from 1811 to 1820 when King George III died. You know, George IV was no longer the Prince Regent, he was the king. So the Regency period fits in those 9 years. It's like amazing that these 9 years can influence so much about literature and all sorts of other things that I'm going to talk about. I think it would be difficult to understand the Regency period without also understanding the context of the time. Here we have the war with Napoleon, started in the late 1700s. There was a treaty from 1800 to 1802. Then it went on again until Napoleon was kind of caught. He had had a disastrous campaign in Russia, and then he was caught and sent to Isle of Elba. He escaped, came back, won them to his side, and then went off to fight Waterloo, and was permanently exiled to St. Helena. There was Isle of Elba and St. Helena, and I think it was like that. It's also interesting to know, especially for those who are unfamiliar with all of the historical aspects of the Regency period, is that Jane Austen lived during the Regency period. Her novels were contemporary romances. Well, the Prince Regent actually loved her novels and wanted signed copies. And we have a letter, I think she was writing to her brother, wondering if she had to do it. She didn't like the way he treated his wife. Funny, relatable commentary. Even 200 years later, we can still relate to it. Others might not know that there was this author named Georgette Heyer who lived last century, and in my opinion, absolutely genius. She was also a historian, like really devoted to history. And I know people say, but she made mistakes. Yes, she did. Majority of what she offered to us was based on real good research that she had done. And she sort of created the contemporary version of Regency romance. Like, she created it as a genre. Jane Austen was writing social commentary in the form of novels that everybody took great delight in. Georgette Heyer actually created a genre out of this period. That's, I think that's what brought a lot of people to, it brought it back into fashion, even though Jane Austen is enduring and people would love it. But I think this gave people a hunger for more. Also, Jane Austen focused a lot on the countryside, whereas Georgette Heyer focused a lot on London and the social mores of the time and the strict, social etiquette. I guess we can start with fashion. My nephew's friend studies at the École du Louvre, and he studies, historical fashion. He gave me, shared with me tons of slides and helped me to see the evolution of fashion, mainly in France, but London kind of followed. They were very similar. From the 1600s all the way through the Regency period, beginning of the 19th century. What we're seeing is, in the 1600s, we'll see kind of what you'd expect with the Three Musketeers, the puffy sleeves for the men, with the big quilted, skirts, boots that, folded over. I'm sure you can picture it. When we watch the men's fashion evolve. We're seeing over the years a very slow progression. We've still got the wigs. We've still got very often like a decorative, shiny colored silk. I think even the female fashion was something that we as readers can relate to. We know that in the 1600s, the women had those like fraise, those big neck collars and everything. As time goes on, start to calm down a little bit. The women were still wearing wigs. The way they cleaned their hair was to put pomatum, which helped it to hold its shape, and to put a scented powder. As we get later on in the Georgian period, we're going from the robe à la française, which are, they have a stomacher, they have paniers, which are baskets on the side which extend the hips out, putting needles to hold the sides of their gown to the stomacher. We're switching to the robe à l'anglaise, that's the English dress. You have the stays, the corset, and then you're putting on a gown on either side, buttoning it up the front, and then the front is open so you can see the decorative petticoat. So already things are getting a little bit easier. By the time they reach, even before the actual Regency period, but when we get into the beginning of the 19th century, they're starting to imitate the dresses that have two influences. One is their interest in the classical Greek, choosing the same gowns that are very fluid, very form-fitting, with a high, bust line called the empire waistline, is from Josephine, the wife of Napoleon, who favored that fashion. So they were all kind of imitating the Empress of France, even though they were at war with them. But once again, we're seeing gowns that are much more relatable to us. We're seeing hairstyles that we find pretty. And I think one major factor in the success of the Regency period is to see these two fashions that we can relate to. Following the Regency period, the waists dropped. The skirts kind of started to get bigger. At the beginning of the Victorian era, there are large skirts. Later in the Victorian era, the skirts go towards the back. There's a bustle at the back and everything like that. And the neckline is really high. And so that's kind of the progression out of the Regency era. So it's almost like we have this little blip in history where dresses are simple and free, rather free, even though they're kind of slender. And that's something that we can imagine ourselves in. So I think those are, fashion has a lot to do with why we like the Regency period. There's also architecture. John Nash was very popular at the time, and he created these terraced. Terraced means stuck together. It's like townhouses, but the word is terrace, with stucco exterior. There were wrought iron balconies, things that we find beautiful, kind of cream with black, balconies. Lots of, there were squares and crescents, and everything was very airy. The rooms were airy, unlike the Baroque period where everything was like heavy tapestry, dark colors. Like now we're kind of in the lighter colors, the paper, like papered walls and things like this. And we can picture ourselves in the story. There were the wars, and so the military had a lot to do with the stories. I mean, in Jane Austen, you see men dressed in scarlet and how they were like the handsome ones. Some of them were on site guarding the coasts or on leave, and then others of them were off fighting on the continent. There was also the strict social mores of the time. Like we had almacs, institution that was run by patronesses who decided who could enter and who could not. And it was based on how good is your ton. Ton is a word that you'll sometimes see in Regency books. It's spelled T-O-N. It's a French word and actually is still used in French today. Like if somebody has a good ton, it means that they're well bred, like they have good upbringing, smooth in social situations. So it would have to do with that. It would have to do with wealth. It would have to do with status. But I think the most important thing was the ton. So there was almacs, there was making your curtsy before the queen, events and all this glittering society. And on the other side, there was beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. There were people that were starving either because they were soldiers come back who no longer had the use of some of their limbs and they were not being taken care of. Or it was people, for instance, we have the landowners, we have the gentry, we have the peerage, those who have a title, business owners, some, nouveau riche, people that are growing their fortunes. And other than that, we have the working class is sort of dwindling. There were other things like a Corn Act was passed, which made it more difficult to buy grain for people living in England. And they did it as a way of protecting against foreign competition, but it ended up starving the people. We Regency romance readers want to focus on everything that's perfect because it is escapism. So those were some of the realities of the Regency period, and they did influence the time. And the Georgian period was very promiscuous. It still went on in the Regency period, especially with the Prince Regent. He was lascivious, he was a bon vivant, he gambled, he had mistresses, he had all these things. There were other good things about him, and so that kind of set the tone. But there were also authors like Hannah More, who was starting to write about more moral subjects that people were getting more interested in. And I would say that transitioned into the Victorian era, where morals, purity, purity of character, I think largely influenced by Queen Victoria, of course, was more prevalent than what we saw during the Georgian period and the Regency period. I've spoken about a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that I left out. I would say that the Regency genre, there was the architecture, there was the clothing, there was the glittering balls, or the strict social etiquette that force the romance to develop a little bit more slowly or with more constraints. And I think that's appealing to a lot of people, especially if you read chaste literature, which is what I write. There was the Prince Regent himself, who was very larger than life. There was Beau Brummel with a fashion, and we even have Lord Byron, who wrote the most beautiful poetry, even though his own life was a little bit of a train wreck. And then, of course, Jane Austen, Marie Edgeworth before her. Regency will keep going for a while. It's popular because it's an era where, even though there are the wars, that's mostly happening out of sight. It's all about like the glittering balls and all these beautiful things. And if you look at some earlier eras, such as the Middle Ages, where there were the Black Plague, or if you look even at the Georgian era, it's difficult sometimes to get people to follow you into the Georgian era. And I also write Georgian romance, so I'm very conscious of this. It ended in France with the Reign of Terror, with beheadings, like a very gory period. Between the fact that they were wearing wigs and like colorful clothes for the men, and then there's this sort of thing hanging over your head that's going to happen, towards I think it was in 1789. In the Regency period, you can fully get lost in the period. You want to get people to attach to hope, where they can find the hero attractive just because of his personality, and he can be one of the more subdued. And you can fudge his scent, because even at the time, men's perfume smelled a lot more like women's. But you can fudge all of that, and you can kind of say, if they're in France, that you can kind of hint that they're going to have an escape plan to get out of the Reign of Terror, just to create that. I think otherwise it's a shame to kind of miss out on this era. What do you think is next? Because we Regency romance writers would like to know. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, you can do so below. And if you haven't listened to my audiobooks, they are free on YouTube if you're willing to listen to the ads, or you can purchase them or get them on the library. Thanks.